Okay, folks, you're all very welcome to Positive Nights, and our guest tonight is Dr. Joe Vitale, and I'm delighted to have him. I think he's a bit of a legend in the whole area of the holistic world, and he was, first time I saw him was in the movie The Secret, and he spoke so well and so clearly then, and I love his work as well around the Ho'oponopono prayer, which he made. I think he made that really, really famous, actually, Joe. You made that really famous around the world and really accessible for people as well. So I'm delighted to have him, and give them all a welcome there energetically from your hearts. Before we start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to chat to Joe for about 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and then I'm going to invite you guys to type in your questions as we're going along. So feel free at any time to type in your question, and I will try my best to get to all the questions before we finish up. The first thing I'm going to do is do this just short meditation to get us all nice and centered. And I'll invite Joe to join us as well. So I'll just invite you all to drop into your heart center and close your eyes. And just feel your energy really drop from your head into your heart center. Feel yourself moving from thinking to feeling. So really feel into where you're at and how your body is right now. Take a couple of deep breaths into your heart center. And really feel your body relax on the out breath. And get a sense of a little light going on in your heart. And get a sense of that energy center, how it works with feeling rather than thoughts. And I invite you on this call to kind of put your energy there, to stay in that zone. So whatever you hear tonight, if it resonates, take it away. No need to go into your head, no need to go into judgment. Just whatever resonates, take that with you. Whatever doesn't resonate, just let it fall away. And feel a big beaming smile come across your face now. Feel your heart kind of connecting, kind of smiling, the whole body smiling together. Smile on your face, smile in your heart. As you open your eyes when you're ready. Lovely. Thanks, everybody. And enjoy this conversation. We're going to just see where it goes. Joe Vitale, you're a bit of a legend. Welcome to Ireland virtually. We're delighted to have you.
Well, this is the next best thing to actually being there, and I can't wait to actually be there.
Yeah, so when you come here, I'm going to buy you a pint of Guinness. That's for definite.
Only a pint? I'm in Texas, everything's bigger here.
We'll see how it goes. So right. I tell you where I want to start, Joe. The reason I want to start here is because I want to start right in the present moment, because you're a man who just really is so spontaneous. That's one of the things I get from your work. The amount of books you've written, the amount of things you've done, albums, movies, you just seem to follow your inspiration in the moment. So I'd like to ask you, what right now is the most inspirational thing in your life? What's going on for you right now that's giving you that kind of excitement?
Well, I'll tell you most transparently, that despite COVID, I've had 2 years of a divorce, of deaths of best friends, of family, um, of a family member attempting suicide. So to be where I'm at in this moment is a breakthrough to a new beginning. So I'm inspired about the future. I'm inspired about the freedom I now have, the new beginnings I'm creating at the age of 67, the new books that I have out. I have 5 or 6 books that came out despite all of the hell that I went through. I am being interviewed for another movie, being filmed for another movie next week. So those are still happening. And I still have new videos I post on Instagram virtually every day, 2 to 3 new videos every day. And I'm having great fun creating those. And I just adopted a puppy, and my partner and I are, as seniors, learning how to raise a a dog from birth. And so, there's all of that. I'm creating, I'm enjoying, I'm having fun, and I'm flying free again.
Okay, so that's been quite a process, and thanks for being so transparent, telling us
Yeah.
right where you're at in the moment. I love it. And I suppose I'd like to ask you, what did you draw on to get yourself through that kind of experience? Did you go back to all the old classics? Did Ho'oponopono play a big part in that process for you?
But that's an awesome question, and it's worth addressing because everybody goes through something. As we go through life, there's going to be curveballs, there's going to be bumps, there's going to be times when you fall and you'll need to get up, and you may need help in getting back up. I think it's important to realize it because one of the things that's overlooked in personal development, whether people watch The Secret or the Law of Attraction, is the idea that it's always going to be rosy. They always think, oh, I discovered a way to have unicorns and ice cream every day and beer every night and whatever it happens to be. And we're in the human experience. Because we're in the human experience, there's going to be days where it's sunny and there are going to be days when it's raining. So yes, I used Ho'oponopono, one of the go-to methods for me for the last 15 years. And I also have used tapping, which is the emotional freedom technique, which I've written about and most people know about, and you can do a YouTube search and learn about. I also turned to Stoicism and learned a lot about the mindset of the ancient Stoics because they went through times that were far, far worse than what we could even imagine. They were horrendous in many ways. It's hard to even imagine that that took place. And yet they managed to survive because of a mindset. And I would take on that mindset. And for example, by reducing everything to the day-to-day experience, you can pretty much get through anything. If I wake up in the morning and go, one day at a time, it's all fine, I can get through the day. Even though in my case, the divorce lasted 2 years, by getting up every day and focusing on the day and only the day, I could get through it. And I also got help. I wasn't, I'm not ashamed even now to say that there are times when you feel like I've tried everything I know to try. Maybe I need somebody to throw me a life raft or a preserver to pull me out of it. So I've had counseling, I've had mentors. I'm a great believer in coaching, so I've used coaches. So to answer your question, I've used everything. And I even remember asking my attorney at one point early on because I was upset, I was disturbed. My life and business was being persecuted. And I said, how do you get through this? What have you learned from all the clients you've worked with? And he said something ultimately profound and ultimately something everybody on this interview, this call, this viewing could take and use. And he said, focus on the future. Focus on the future, which is another way of saying, what's your intention? Where do you want to go? What do you want to create? Yeah, today may be a little bit murky or muddy, but where do you want to go tomorrow or next week or next month or next year? And so all of these various things, including what do I want for the future? What do I want to create? They all help me.
Sure, yeah, that's great to hear all of that, because when you go through those kind of challenges, that's where the rubber hits the road, as they
Right.
say, that phrase. And you've got to practice all that. I've had periods in my own life where that's happened, and you draw on all the stuff you've built up, and you really get to use it then. And you spoke there about kind of taking it day by day, and kind of what sparked in my mind, as you were saying, it was that moment of now. That's really where all our power is, There's a great teacher that I'm sure you know, Eckhart Tolle, and he's just obsessed with the now. There's nothing else going on. The now, the now, the now. So it's like, I suppose where I want to go is really Dr. Len, the Ho'oponopono man. I'm going to say Hawaiian prayer because it's easier for me to pronounce. He's quite a character. He's a bit of a legend. Is he still around? Is he still working away? And are you guys still connected?
He is in full retirement. He used to say he was retired, but he'd still go out and give seminars. Now he stays at home. He does not travel. He does not give seminars. He is not doing any of the work outside of his own house. And he's in his 80s. As far as I know, he's in good health. We're not corresponding anymore. We did 3 seminars together. We wrote the first book together. I wrote 2 others by myself after it, but Zero Limits was written with his help. And we put on 3 Zero Limits seminars together, which were filmed and remarkable. But these days, he's secluded. He's reclusive, and 80-some years old. He likes it that way.
And for people who don't know, can you take us back to the story of what he did in the psychiatric hospital? Because it's quite an incredible story, what he did there.
It is an incredible story, and it's the story that captured me. But when I first heard it, I couldn't believe it. I dismissed it. I said, it has to be an urban legend. It can't be real. What I heard was a therapist helped heal an entire ward of mentally ill criminals at a state hospital in Hawaii. And he did it by working on himself, not them. And when I heard it, I thought, well, this doesn't sound right. First of all, they're mentally insane criminals at a state hospital who have been sentenced there. So they sound like they're untouchable, untreatable. And then for him to work on himself, how does that help cure them, the patients? And so I dismissed it, but I kept hearing the story. And back then there were no books about it. There were no seminars about it. There was nothing online about it. And so it was very difficult to find anything, but I went on a quest. I said, if that story is true, I need to find out. I need to get to the bottom of it, and the world needs to know. And if nobody's out there telling it, then I will be the one to tell it. So I hired a private investigator. I went looking, I found him, and the therapist, his name is Dr. E. Haleakala Hulen. I always called him Dr. Hulen for short. I called him up, talked to him on the phone. He explained that it was true about the hospital. He tried to explain Ho'oponopono to me, but I couldn't get it. He kept saying that we're here to clean our own perceptions, and when we do, the world gets corrected. And it made no sense to me. He invited me to his first seminar, which I went to. And again, back then, because it was so underground and unknown, I think there were 7 people in the room besides me and Dr. Hulen. And he talked about all aspects of creating our reality. And he said, have you ever heard the phrase, you create your own reality? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm one of the guys who writes about it. I get on a soapbox and I tell the world about it. Yeah, you create your own reality. And he said, well, if you create your own reality and there's a mentally ill patient in front of you, didn't you create them too? You created your own reality. And he was blowing my mind. He was stretching the concept of responsibility beyond what I had accepted before. Because most of us, even if we are wise enough to know we create our own reality, are usually drawing a line in the sand and saying, yeah, I created it up to here. You created it on the other side. And we get into blame and victimhood and all of that stuff. But Dr. Hulen was pointing out, nope, you're responsible for all of it. And I really got hooked at that point. He taught me the 4 phrases, which is the very basics of Ho'oponopono. There's a lot of depth to it, which is why we did 3 seminars and I wrote 3 books. But the basic 4 phrases anybody can take and run with right now. And they're these phrases: I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. That's it. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And Dr. Hulen was teaching me that as you were perceiving a problem, and usually we'll say it's another person, it's something event that took place, it's something that's gnawing at us, we're upset for some reason. He's pointing out that our upset is not outside of us, it's inside of us. We may say our employer, employee, our customers, our sales reps, our spouse, our kids, our animals are the ones upsetting us. But the upset is inside us. It's not out there. We point out there, but what we're feeling is in here. And this is a really important distinction, and it took me a while to get it, and I'm taking my time to explain it so everybody gets the gift of understanding. So when you realize that the upset is in you, then you have a clue that what you need to change is inside you. And so Dr. Hulen went on to explain that as you're feeling this upset, you say the 4 phrases inside yourself to your connection to whatever you call your higher power. For some people, they'll say God. Others, it's the universe, it's Gaia, it's nature, it's the divine. For me, it's usually the divine. For Dr. Hulen, he would often say the divine or divinity. But we all have a sense that there's something bigger than us, even if we just call it the life force. There is something. I have called it the great mystery most recently. Joseph Campbell called it he called it the great mystery. I've been calling it the great something. So we know there's something. We're calling it the great something. So we feel something that's upsetting. We know it's inside of us. We say the 4 phrases: I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to, as a kind of prayer, to our connection to the great something. And what we're doing is asking it to rectify us. It's asking us to clean up our perception. In fact, the word Ho'oponopono is Hawaiian, which means to make right. What are we making right? Our perception. In some of the seminars that Dr. Hulen and I did together, he would often say this line that always got a joke, but always got a laugh, but it was not a joke. It was very profound. He would say, have you ever noticed that whenever you have a problem, you are there? And I still love the line. Have you ever noticed that whenever you have a problem, you are there? You're the common element. You're the common denominator. You're actually the participant in the creation of the problem. Whether you say you attracted it, whether you did it unconsciously, consciously, you have played a role in the problem. Otherwise, you wouldn't even notice it. It wouldn't be there. Because you're noticing it, again, that notice is inside of you. That perception is inside of you. The upset is inside of you. So Dr. Hulen taught me that basics right there. And he explained that what he was doing at the mental hospital for the criminally insane was that he would look at the inmates' charts, not necessarily even talk to the inmates. He certainly wasn't doing traditional therapy with them. We knew that didn't work. They knew it didn't work. So he would look at the charts and he'd see somebody, killed somebody, raped somebody, violently hurt somebody, and he'd be upset. He doesn't even know who the person is, but he's upset. Where's the upset? In him. So what does he do? I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. On his upset, speaking to divinity. What's he trying to do? To reduce that upset, to get to a place of clarity, of peace, of serenity, of acceptance. When he's able to get there, you look out as they did in that hospital, and the patients start to get better. Within a few months, they weren't being shackled or sedated, which is what they needed virtually every day. Within a few months after that, some of them were being released. They were being pronounced as being healed and fit for society again, and the doors of freedom were opened for them. And within 4 years, the entire ward that he worked at was closed. So this is the story, greatly elaborated on here, that I ended up writing about in the first book, Zero Limits, and the second book, At Zero, and the third book, which is most recently called The Fifth Phrase. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's quite a nutshell, Joe. You know, it's an incredible story. And I'd like to, about the man himself, Yu Len. I watched a couple of those things you did, those recordings in Hawaii, and the man himself seems he seems on a bit of a different buzz, you know? I mean, I love the part about that it's much more empowering for me if I know that I can clean the situation in myself, and then the situation will reflect back. We really getting to understand that this is an inside job.
Yes.
If somebody turns up and they're bugging you, it's your issue. You clean it up, and then it'll change or evolve. But he has such a confidence about him. He seems to be very, very evolved. When you met him in person, were you very impressed by his energy? Did you feel a kind of a vibe that you feel off people like that?
I felt that he was and I think I said this in Zero Limits, a lovable grandfather. He was open-hearted, he was non-threatening, he was totally present and at ease and transparent. So I felt immediately comfortable with him, immediately comfortable. I have always felt that he was tapped into more of a divine frequency than most people. And I've always felt that his mission in life was to really live from that frequency. He openly would say he didn't always succeed. You know, there's moments in the Zero Limits events where he seems a little grouchy or a little impatient. I think that's part of his charm and part of his transparency. I know that one time somebody went to go, we had broken for lunch, and so we're all eating, and he's sitting someplace eating, and some attendee went over to ask him a question, and he just said, "I'm eating, leave me alone." But he didn't mean it mean, he meant it in a way that most of us don't do. He meant it that he was purely in the moment. And in that moment, he was feeding his body, his mind, his soul. This was his break. And as a speaker, I know that you cherish those moments because you've been speaking all day and you want to break, true break, where you don't speak over a meal or when you're just meditating. And so he has this kind of hard to read personality. On one level, everybody wants him to be the lovable, kickback, let's all tell jokes kind of a guy. But on the other level, he's tuned into the moment, to spirit. And if spirit says, get out of here and go for a walk, he'll just leave and go for a walk. Very much in the moment.
The beauty of the prayer itself is that you don't need to be Yu Len for it to work.
Right.
It's a powerful, I've used it myself in my life. So do you feel that this prayer will work for even a guy who says, I don't really believe this, and he starts trying the prayer? Do you think the prayer has a life of its own, an energy of its own? Okay.
Yeah, and I explored that more in the second book, the one I call At Zero, because when I wrote the second book, I had been practicing Ho'oponopono for a decade, for 10 years. And during that time, I had heard from everybody. I had heard from the skeptics, I had heard from the critics, I had heard from the cult-like fans who were saying this works for anything you can name. And they were sending in stories, some of which I put in all the books, of people having interpersonal relationships healed, healing problems taken care of. I've mentioned animals several times, people who were in love with their pets and their pets were ill. They would do Ho'oponopono for their perceptions of the need for healing, and the pets would get better. Financial concerns, everything. I have had people who were just diehard skeptics say, all right, I'll try it. It's just saying 4 stupid lines. I mean, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. What's the big deal? And then they would come back and say, I don't know how it works or why it works, but what I did it on was resolved magically, unexplainably, just almost like magic. And I think that the 4 phrases are actually more than 4 phrases. I think that the phrases are a kind of combination law to open up our heart and allow more spirituality to come in. And if you don't mind, I'll explain the 4 phrases a wee bit more so that people can understand what's going on. When we say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, the first thing to note is you can say it in any order. I just kind of say it that way out of habit. But you can mix it up. You can do whatever you want. But I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. So what are we saying when we actually say these phrases? Basically, when we say something like, I'm sorry, the further meaning is, I'm sorry for whatever part of me that may have been unconscious, or any part of my ancestors who may have contributed to this perception of a problem. I'm sorry for being blind to it. Please forgive me for not being aware. Please forgive my ancestors for living the life of unconsciousness. And I'll stop right there because neither one of these are negative statements. Neither one of these are statements for self-punishment. And I'm specifically pointing that out because I've done this enough to know that a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to say I'm sorry, or I don't want to say, please forgive me, because I didn't do anything wrong. And I'll have to point out, we're talking about you being unconscious to what you have done. And if you're unconscious to it, how do you know what you were thinking or what you were doing or what your ancestors might have been thinking or doing? Because you're unconscious to it. One of the examples I would give is, imagine you go to a grocery store and it's busy and you got your cart and you're looking for your bread and whatever else, and you bump into somebody. Don't you naturally just go, oh, I'm sorry? Don't you naturally turn and apologize to the person?
Mm-hmm.
You're not apologizing because you did anything wrong. You're not apologizing because you need to be punished. You're not apologizing because you are weak or wrong in some way, shape, or form. You're apologizing because you were unconscious in that moment. That's the purity of I'm sorry and please forgive me. So when you're saying it, we're asking the divine to realize, well, we've been sleepwalking through life, and all of us do it, all of us. There's so much I can tell you about Ho'oponopono and all the other things I've learned over the 15, 16 years I've been doing it at this point, that I wish I had more time. But let's stay on the 4 phrases. So I love you and I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. When you say thank you, you're basically saying thank you for correcting this problem. Thank you for helping me rectify it. Thank you for bringing me to a place of neutrality, a place of peace, a place of serenity, a place where the problem and the perception have been removed. When you say, I love you for my life. I love you for this process. I love you for Ho'oponopono. I love you for this clearing. I love you for this healing. You can go on forever with all the different aspects of it. So when we kind of mumble, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, we're actually giving a shorthand prayer for something that is impacted with lots more meaning and energy. And at this point, because the phrases have been used for so long, they were used long before I ever wrote my book, Zero Limits, because this has been a cultural thing in Hawaii for centuries. There's 2 kinds of Ho'oponopono, and again, we can talk about that if you want and if there's time. But when we, in this present moment, feel that there's a problem or an issue in our lives, we realize it's in us, we realize it's perception-based, we realize 4 simple phrases, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, can get us out of jail. And then we can say them inside as if having a conversation and making a request to the great something, the great mystery, God, the divine, nature. And it's that process that actually helps unravel everything, even for the skeptics, the critics, and the diehard fans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Joe, you've written the 3 books about this subject: Zero Limits, At Zero, and The Fifth Phrase. Now, the fifth phrase is the most recent one. It's like a trilogy of books. And the fifth phrase is, you feel there's another phrase that gives even more power to this prayer.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so everybody wants to know the fifth phrase right now, including myself, but I'll leave that ball in your court to reveal as much as you want to about that. Tell us a bit about the fifth phrase.
Well, it's important to realize that the fifth phrase required an entire book to explain. So one of my most recent books is called The Fifth Phrase, and it's entirely about the fifth phrase. So my explaining it, which I'll do, I don't mind sharing with the people you've gathered here, it will be maybe hard to absorb and hard to understand, because saying it without the book to explain everything might not fully reveal its power. Now, having said that as my intro and my disclaimer, I will say that several years ago, I was hosting an advanced Ho'oponopono event. And this is where people who had already been practicing Ho'oponopono for a long time, had already read my first 2 books. They flew in from all over the world, including from Ireland. And they came to a place in Texas where we had a retreat. And I and a bunch of other speakers were going to talk about different aspects of Ho'oponopono. The night before I was to speak, I'm scheduled to be the first speaker in the morning. The night before, I had an awakening, a download, an inspiration, an aha moment, where what I've now called the fifth phrase descended upon me. I didn't plan on it. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't think about it. I didn't request it. It appeared. And one of the things I want to footnote for all those here, especially if you're new to Ho'oponopono, as you practice Ho'oponopono, you keep clearing yourself of limiting beliefs. And the more you clear yourself, the more you become available for inspiration from the great something. So I've been doing this. And so at 2, 3 in the morning, whatever it was, and this fifth phrase came to me, it came because I had created an opening to receive it in myself. And I decided on stage the next morning, I'm revealing it to the people there. And it took me an hour and a half to explain it. And I don't have that much time here. One woman who was in the audience, who has been a diehard fan of my work, who'd been practicing Ho'oponopono, she came up after my presentation and said, Dr. Joe, that fifth phrase is so powerful that it eliminates the need for the first 4. And I actually use that quote in the book, The Fifth Phrase. All right, so what is the fifth phrase? The fifth phrase is going to sound like bad English or bad Irish, depending on how we translate it here. The fifth phrase is, I forgives myself. I forgives myself. Now, if I said I forgive myself, you'd all go, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you wouldn't stop and think about it. When I say I forgives, plural, myself, now you're wondering, why does he say it that particular way? So let's dissect it. The I is not referring to you as an I. It's not referring to the I of Joe. The I is referring to the I of divinity. When Dr. Hulen would write to me, we'd exchange emails and so forth when we weren't together, he would end it by saying, peace of I. Piece of I, and the I would be the letter I, not an I, E-Y-E, but the letter I. What does he mean? It's the peace of divinity. He was wishing the peace of all that is to me. So when I say I forgives myself, the I is referring to divinity. It's referring to your concept of God. It's referring to your concept of the higher power. It's not you. It is not the I that I would refer to myself like I did something. That's not the I. I'm talking about the divine. That's the I. So it's the supernatural part.
Yeah, it's like the
Forgive,
I am, the I am. Yeah.
the I
That
am,
kind of,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
The forgives is referring to divinity is forgiving you. You are not forgiving you. Divinity has already forgiven you. I forgives. Divinity forgives. What is divinity forgiving? Myself is not one word, it's two words. And the self is a small s, not a capital S. So divinity is forgiving your little self. Divinity is forgiving your subconscious programming. In Ho'oponopono, they use the word data. And Dr. Hulan always used the word data. We are eliminating data, erasing data, deleting data. The data in our terms would probably be limiting beliefs, unconscious assumptions, paradigms of scarcity, paradigms of separation. All of those, that all comes together to be called data. So I forgives myself means the divine forgives your data. Another way to look at this is that the divine's already forgiven. Dr. Hulen once went for a walk, and when he came back, he was crying. He had tears coming down his eyes. And when we asked what was going on, he said, the divine only wants you to know one thing. The divine wants you to know that you are loved. You are loved. You are loved. All of the judgments, all of the resentments, all of the sense of guilt, all of the sense of justice, it's coming from our little self, what Freud would have called ego. So I forgives myself is the fifth phrase, which loosely with the translation we got to work with in the time we have, means the divine forgives your data. The divine forgives your subconscious self. The divine forgives your limiting beliefs. And so the one person would come up and said, with that one phrase, you don't need the other four. I feel that do what you're inspired to do. Use all five phrases, use four, use one of them. I've had people over the years say, I don't like saying I'm sorry or please forgive me. And I asked Dr. Ulin about it, and he says, they don't have to say it. Just say the one you want to say. Mm-hmm. And I've gone on presentations where I said, you know, if you walked around all day and only said thank you, your life would transform. Or if you walked around all day and only said, I love you inside yourself, not to other people, well, that might be cool. But if you walked around inside yourself saying, I love you, that's going on in your head, your vibe would change, your spirits would change, your mind would change, your essence would change, and what you would attract into your life would change. This is the power of these phrases. I'm in favor as a student of Ho'oponopono and practitioner of saying all of them. But I have no problem in having the cafeteria approach where you just walk by and pick the one you want that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of a long answer to.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that with us. That's it's really interesting, the fifth phrase. I like it. I like it. Joe, I feel that you're a man who knows how to manifest, right? So I want to ask you about manifestation, because as I mentioned at the beginning, I saw you in The Secret. The Secret has swept the world. Everybody knows about The Secret at this point. Rhonda Byrne did an amazing job gathering up some great speakers. Now, in your own life, when you want to manifest, how have you refined it now that when you want to manifest something, can you tell us the procedure that you go through?
Yeah, and I'd love to talk about that because it's one of my favorite subjects. Ho'oponopono is one of my favorites, and the art of manifestation is yet another one. And what's really cool is I combine both of them. There's a tip right there. If you want a manifestation hack or a law of attraction hack, Combine Ho'oponopono with the art of manifestation, and you can accelerate your path. So what am I referring to here? All right, again, this is another big subject, and I wish I had more time with everybody to go through all of it, which is why I've written so many books. I've written 80 books. Why? Because I have so much to say, so many different angles and insights and stories to share. And I just love sharing them. All right, what I tell people is, in general, you're going to go ahead and attract whatever it is you want to have, do, or be. So why don't we? One of the reasons why is that we have what I call counter intentions. We have unconscious blocks inside of us. We say consciously we want one thing, but our subconscious mind is already set with a predetermined belief to veto what we say we want. A common example is when somebody says, I intend to attract more money. I saw the movie The Secret. I read the book. I read Dr. Joe Vitale's books. I read Jack Canfield, Bob Proctor. I went to all the seminars. I went to Tony Robbins. So I'm going to attract money. That's their intent. And they look congruent, and they look fiery, and they look determined. They don't attract any money. Why? Because subconsciously they have a counter intention that has some variable of money's the root of all evil, money's bad, money's corrupting, rich people are greedy. Any of these, or there's countless dozens of other limiting beliefs around money, will prevent the person from attracting money. So I believe one of my contributions to the success literature of the world is the understanding that there's a missing secret to success. And the missing secret is you have to get clear of the subconscious blocks before you can consciously attract what you've stated you wanted. So how do you do this? Ho'oponopono is one way. When I, for example, realized that, let's take a real example. Yeah. I'm 67 now. When I was 60 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a musician. I love music. I had a guitar or two. I played harmonica, no musical education, didn't sing in the shower, never did karaoke, never sang behind the wheel of the car, didn't have a band, didn't perform on stage. So I'm totally green. I have the desire. So there I state my intention. Age 60, it's on my bucket list. I'm going to be a musician. All right. Now, the rest should be easy. Go pick up the guitar and go in the studio. It wasn't easy. I immediately fell into fear, insecurity, doubt, second guessing myself, dragging my feet, wanting to say, I'm not going to do this. This is too hard. This is too scary. What if a lifetime of a career that I have built up is ruined because I come out as a musician who truly is bad? I almost stopped. I almost gave it up. I almost quit the dream. And that's where most people do stop and give up and quit the dream. And I'm spelling this out so everybody watching this can relate to it. We've all been there. We've all been there when we said, here's my intent. I'm going to go out there and open this business or be a musician or write this book or name it. And then we don't do it because we allowed our own subconscious beliefs to rear up, scare us, and we just went, oh, we're not going to do that, and rationalize why we didn't. Now, of course, at this point in my life, I was in The Secret, for God's sake. I've written a lot of the books that people have used to attain their desires. So I can't give up. How would that look in the world? And so I used my own material on myself. I used Ho'oponopono. I used everything from tapping, from questioning beliefs, to coaching, everything to get rid of my limiting beliefs around music. As a result, 7 years later, I have 15 albums out. I've been in Rolling Stone magazine twice. I have performed live with the Band of Legends. My band is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Some of my music has been used as soundtracks for movies. I'm being filmed, I mentioned earlier, for another movie. I think it's next week. They're going to use one of my songs in the movie. Some of my songs were nominated for the Posy Award, which is the Grammys of positive music. I even studied with Melissa Etheridge, who's a rock and roll Hall of Famer, legend, icon that I've been a fan of for 20 years. I studied with her in her house, in her studio, only her and I, holding guitars. I sang for her.
Wow.
Go on. I'm trying to
So the point is, this stuff works.
This stuff works. And what I'm demonstrating is how it works. The first lesson I want everybody to get is whenever you want to do something you've never done before, you'll feel uncomfortable, just like I did with music. Why? Because you're leaving your comfort zone. That's all. It doesn't mean don't do it. It doesn't mean you're got to be killed or harmed or maimed. It simply means you're leaving your comfort zone. Be a little alert as you go about creating your reality. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we all have limiting beliefs around the things that we're doing for the first time ever. I went into strongman training. I don't know, it's 5 years ago. I don't remember when it was now. Strongman training is when you take a horseshoe and you bend it with your bare hands. And you take steel bars and you bend them. You take nails and you bend them. You take screws and you bend them. I did that. But when I decided to do it, I was scared. All the limiting beliefs came up. And so that's what I'm telling you. When you go to do something you've not done before, you'll feel uncomfortable. When you explore the limiting beliefs, they'll start surfacing. When you clear them, then you are free to accelerate your path to manifest whatever it is you wanted. That's how I'm doing it. That's how you can do it. And again, there's so much to say about this. I'm a little frustrated. It's like, I need more time.
Thanks, Joe. That was great. I thought to ask you've manifested so much in your life, so it's great to get your insights around that. Do you think they'll make another secret at some point? Have you been contacted about that? I heard some rumors.
I'm only laughing because I don't know. I think it was The Secret came out in 2006. And I went on Larry King's television show twice, I think in 2007. And in the second time I was on, he asked me, is there going to be a sequel? And I said, yes. That was in 2007. Mm-hmm. There still hasn't been one. Mm-hmm. I don't know what Rhonda had led us to believe she would do a follow-up. I have no idea why she never did. She has enough footage from all the interviews she did that she doesn't even have to go back and interview anybody. She can just re-edit what she didn't use, and there's volume 2. She could probably come out with the next 5 secrets, but it's up to her and her inspiration to do whatever she does.
I think the combination of the prayer and the law of attraction kind of methods is a brilliant tool. So thank you for that. One thing that kind of is a little bit off track, but it's really impacted me in The Secret, when the guy told the story about the vision board, and he put a house on it, and he ended up living in the exact house. Like, have you got an amazing vision board story that even blew you away? Like, do you value them?
Yes, I do. That in that particular case, that was John Asseroff who talked about having the vision and cutting out the picture and putting it on his vision board, and now he lives in the house, and he still lives in the house. So he manifested it. Yes, I'm a great believer in the vision board. In fact, I've got so many different programs where I talk about how to do some of these different things. Here's how the brain works. I want to give you this as a major takeaway. This is how the brain works. The brain works in terms of images. You can sit there and talk to it all day long, but you have to have a visual that represents what you want to tell your brain this is what to go for. You have to give it a target. So the very first thing to understand is a vision board has visions on it. It has visuals on it. I'm a car guy, so I've often cut out pictures of cars, or I would go, most car manufacturers today have car configurators on their website. So you can go to the car of your dreams and configure it, the color you want, the options you want, all the bells and whistles, and then you can print it out. When you print it out, there is the visual of the exact desire. You paste that on your vision board, and you can put as many things as you want on the vision board. So the first thing to know is the brain responds to the visuals. You want images, pictures, drawings that represent what you want on the vision board. The second thing your brain responds to is emotion. When you look at the vision board, you want to look at it with love, with passion, with desire. The three big activators of our body and mind are the emotions of love, hate, and fear. Most of us focus on what we hate and what we fear. We spend a great deal of time talking about it, especially if we're on social media. That's where it's flung all over the place. But what we want to do is create a vision board of our dreams, of the images, look at it with the emotion of love. And then the third thing we want is to repeat it. This is why creating a vision board, you just take a poster board, which you can get at an art supply store, and start pasting things on it. And because of what you have today, you can Google the artwork you want, and you can create something online. And then I say, after you've done it, put copies of it everywhere, in your bathroom mirror, in your refrigerator, or on your refrigerator, probably in your refrigerator. Put it on your cell phone so you see it when it comes on. Put it on your computer so it pops up every few minutes. Put it on the ceiling so you wake up in the morning and the first thing you see is, oh, there's my vision board. And all of this is to program your mind that here is my target. And then esoterically, that image has activated the brain. The brain is connected to the collective unconscious of all of us. I call it the esoteric internet. Mm-hmm. And the esoteric internet can receive your request and send it along the esoteric internet, and it'll touch the person who can most help you achieve the desires on your vision board, and it will awaken them to do something that'll be part of the co-creation process. So again, there's so much to talk about, but you can take what I just said and run with it. Go make a vision board right after this.
Yeah, I have one at home, and I love the story Jim Carrey told about the check he wrote himself for $1 million, and he used to go up to the Hollywood Hills and look at the check. So I wrote a check to myself for $1 million, and I'm going to send it to you, Joe, and you can cash it for me. And I'll pick up the money in bags.
You can wire it over if you like, but yeah.
I'm a firm believer in it though, because even just looking at it and the emotion it inspires, it makes you feel good. All of that kind of stuff works. So I want to go, what I love about how you work, Joe, is right, you combine your marketing expertise, because you're a good marketeer, right? And you combine that with spirituality, and it's done in a very seamless way. So you've called a recent book 6 Steps to Enlightenment, which is one of the topics we focused on for this chat tonight. So I like the way you've got it down to 6 steps. Brilliant. So can you give us the 6 steps so that we'll all be enlightened by the time this call is over?
Holy smoke. This is another example. I wrote a whole book to explain the 6 steps. So for me to do it in a couple of minutes, I'm not going to be able to. I can run through them, and we have touched on some of them here. So you mentioned me in marketing. So this is the book, The Miracle. I don't know if anybody can actually see that with all the lights.
Yeah.
That has the 6 steps in it. See, this is an example of Dr. Joe being the marketer now. He's going, here is my plug. We're pausing for a commercial break. The Miracle, 6 Steps to Enlightenment, available on Amazon. And the Kindle version and the audio version is there. All right, so I said in the book, which is like 300 pages for me to explain it, there's 6 steps. The very first step I call the missing secret. That's the one I was referring to earlier when I said that when you go for a goal, you will tend to achieve it unless you have interference from a limiting paradigm within yourself. And so the missing secret means you have to find what the limitations are and erase them. Now, even before all of that, we need to know what we want. And I begin the book by asking people, what do you want? Even the people on this call right now, I'm not going to get to talk to everybody, but what is it that you want to get out of this time together? What is it that you want to have, do, or be? What is it that you're hoping to discover or unearth or be surprised by? All of these are opening questions that kind of lead the way through the missing secret, the first step. Because when you declare what you want, here's what usually happens. You either start going for it or you start rationalizing why you're not doing anything about it. Rationalizing why you're not taking any action at all is actually revealing your limiting beliefs. That's why there's a missing secret. The missing secret, I'm calling it that because for most success literature that's been out there for the last 100 to 200 years, they didn't talk about the power of the subconscious mind in terms of limitations. There are books like Joseph Murphy's book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, but he doesn't spend time saying there's limiting beliefs in there and you have to unroot them. You have to get rid of that data, to use a Ho'oponopono term, before you can have, do, or be what you want. So that's the first step. The second step I talk about is how to use your brain to get results. And that's what we were just talking about when I said your brain responds to the three ways of getting results. And the first is having visuals that responds to the images. And the second is having emotion, preferably the emotion of love. And the third is repeating it because the repetition is going to program it. And then by extension, when you're doing this with the brain, it sends your request to the collective unconscious. And I do believe there's an esoteric internet. We're all connected to it. And we make a very clear request. It goes into the esoteric internet, travels along that line invisibly and quickly, and shakes, rattles, and rolls whoever is on the pipeline that could help you achieve your dreams. This is, oh, so many stories. How do I tell you so many stories? You know how I got into the movie The Secret? I tell two different versions of the story.
Okay.
The first version is Rhonda Byrne was given a copy of my book, The Attractor Factor. She read it, called me up, and said, I'm going to make a movie about the law of attraction. I'd like you to be in it, which is true. She did read my book, The Attractor Factor. She did call me up. She did invite me to be in her movie. And of course, the rest is history. I ended up in it. There's another story, the one I don't usually tell. Before I ever got that phone call, I was in a mastermind group. A mastermind is when 5 or 6 people, 6 to 12. It's a Napoleon Hill concept.
Napoleon Hill, yeah.
Yeah, get together to support each other. I walked into a mastermind and said, one of my goals is to be in a movie. And I don't want a minor role. I don't want to be the guy sitting with his back to the camera over at the bar. And I got to tell everybody that my friend, that's me over there. That's me in the movie. No, I want a primary visible role in a movie. And we want the movie to be noteworthy. And I walked in and said this, I got no movie experience. I had been on television, but I hadn't been in any movies at that point. And so for me to say it to my mastermind was just like saying, I want to go to Mars tomorrow. Can somebody give me a ride? It was just bizarre. But nobody critiqued me. Nobody was skeptical. Nobody was a naysayer. They just kind of nodded their head and held the intention. And I believe that's why I was in the movie The Secret. My request went into the esoteric internet, traveled around to Australia, woke Rhonda Byrne up, and she looked over and said, oh, this book, The Attractor Factor, who's this guy? I want to call him. That's how the brain works. And that's step 2 in the 6 steps to enlightenment. The third one is all about clearing. And clearing is what I've been referring to when I say you use Ho'oponopono, or you use tapping, or any of the methods that other people may know other things to do that are tools to help us reduce and erase the data that interferes and limits us from achieving our desires. The fourth has to do with perception. And this is the idea, and I attribute it to Einstein, because he said we cannot change our problems on the same level of thinking that created them. And so we have to start looking at levels of consciousness. And again, I've written an entire book called The Awakening Course where I go into this. But to be as serving as I can, let me quickly explain the levels of consciousness. The first is victimhood. We're all born into it. Very few of us are born as Buddha. We are born as victims, and we live as victims. Most of us die as victims. If we're lucky, everybody here is lucky, you get to be empowered, which is the second state. You saw the movie The Secret, you read one of my books, somebody else's book, you saw this. And so you realize, oh, I could have, do, or be anything. That's powerful. That's the second stage. That's the level of empowerment. But at some point you realize, much like me, when I went through the 2 years of divorce and grief, something happened. It's like death of my mother, then the death of my father, then the death of my best friend. And you realize, I don't have control. I don't have total control. I have a lot of control. We have more control than we ever thought before in our lives. We don't have all control. And that's where surrender is the third stage. And surrender, Ho'oponopono is a doorway to it. Because Ho'oponopono is you saying, I can't solve this problem on my own, so please help me. When you're saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, you're not actually solving your own problem, you're requesting assistance in solving your own problem. And so it's a form of surrender, which is the third stage. The fourth stage is awakening itself. And if there's time at the end of our time together, I will lead you through a meditation that'll bring you right to the door of awakening. And so that is the fourth stage. The fifth step, or the fourth step, the fifth step is the mindset of expectation. I usually end my videos that I put on Instagram, and I usually end the emails I send out with the phrase, expect miracles. And usually I wear a t-shirt that says, expect miracles. Today I wanted you to learn a new word. So I put it on my chest. And eudaimonia, by the way, is a word referring to the state of happiness, a state of bliss, a state of imperturbability, a state of serenity, which I believe is what we all really want. Mm. We think we want a new car or a house or a spouse or whatever, but actually what we want is happiness. We just think what we want will get us it. But the inside secret is you can be happy now.
Yeah.
If you're happy now, you will most likely get what you want just without the baggage, without the drag, because you don't need it.
That's probably the greatest hack right there, how to play the game.
Yeah.
Get happy now. Yeah.
Be happy now is the big secret. And so that was the fifth step, is the perceptions, expecting miracles. And the sixth step is awakening. And again, if there's time at the end, I'll walk you through a meditation that'll take you right to the door of awakening.
Okay, so everybody will be enlightened at the end of this call, or else we'll get your money back, send it to us, and we'll refund all your money.
Hey, he said it, not me.
So here we go. A few questions coming in from people. So I'm going to go over to this here, mostly about the prayer here. It's kind of practical things, Joe. So Violetta is asking, does it matter for how long we have to say it in a day? And also, do we have to think of a situation when we say the prayer?
Okay, those are great questions. Let's look at that. First of all, Dr. Hulen said that you should be saying the 4 phrases nonstop forever. Why? Because he says there is so much that needs clean, so much data that's in our subconscious, unconscious, even collective unconscious mind, that we can't even imagine cleaning it in a short period of time. So he says, do it all the time. I remind you how easy it is. When I first started saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I had to make a little, sticky note, put it on my computer to remind me to do it and to remind me of the 4 phrases. That was 15 years ago. Now it's the background audio in my head. I used to say it's the background tape in my head, but there's no tape in my head. There's a voice, and it's saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, even as I'm talking to you right now, to all of you. So by saying it, at first, it's like creating a new habit. There's some intention involved and a little bit of discipline, but then it takes over and you're saying it all the time. So the first part of the answer is to say it all the time. The second part of the answer is, I have found that Ho'oponopono works best when you do have something you're working on. So if there is something bothering you, something you're trying to attract, or you're frustrated by, or there's a delay of some sort, if you're not at peace, and this is my really bottom line way of saying it, if you're not at the eudaimonia place, if you're not at serenity, then something has pulled you away from it. You can clean on that something. And so I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you is said on whatever is pulling you away from the moment. It seems to work best when you're doing it. Now, one more thing about this, because the question was remarkable. I have found that by doing Ho'oponopono, whether you have a problem or not, makes your life easier. And the way that I equate this, now I've never been to Ireland, but in most countries, they have street sweepers, machines or people that come out in the middle of the night, like 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and they clean the streets. And they clean it so that when you get up at 7, 8, or 9, and you go get your coffee or you go to work, you drive on streets or walk on streets that are pretty clean. And you never once think about it. You never once think, oh, there were street sweepers last night. Ho'oponopono is the street sweeper for your life. It cleans your path before you start going down it. In some places, and again, I don't know about Ireland, but in the States, where the states have a lot of snow, there are snow blowers that come out in the middle of the night and they blow the snow off the road. And so when we get on the road, we don't see any snow, but we also don't go thank the snow blower because we didn't even think of them. Ho'oponopono blows the snow away before you get there. So it can make life easier by practicing it, whether there's a problem to focus on or not.
I have one of the bracelets.
Yes.
You know, yeah, I wear it all the time.
Right there, yeah.
I just get it going on all the time. Get that prayer going as much as you can. Definitely. So, okay, so Jacqueline is saying that she feels really confident with manifesting physical things, but what is the best way if you're looking to manifest something non-physical? For example, more consistency with things I know are good for me, less fear, and being more decisive. So she's trying to manifest something about her energy to make herself less fearful. How does she work with that in manifestation?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I would remind all of us that what we're doing is looking for the limiting beliefs that's creating the experience we want to change. So if there is fear there, the fear is stemming not from whatever you think it's stemming from, it's stemming from beliefs. And you want to ask on the subconscious level, what are the beliefs or what might the beliefs be that would cause me to be concerned? Fear is a very natural thing for all of us in the human experience. Fear is there to make sure we survive. We're programmed for survival. That is the number one thing we're programmed for, is survival. But because of that program, we often don't even tiptoe into the areas we really want to go in because we're afraid. That part of us that is programmed for fear and survival is saying, you might get hurt if you go over there, so baby, maybe you better not go there. And we want to look at that fear. Now, one of the things I learned to do is to ask myself, is the fear real? Now, for example, at this point in my career, I've spoken on stages all over the world, except Ireland so far. And some of the stages were 20,000 people in front of me. In the early days, when I first started speaking, I was terrified. I couldn't speak in front of 5 people because I was more insecure. I was more withdrawn, more of an introvert, just wanted to be with my books. And over time, I kept being invited to do things like go on Larry King, where 2 million people are watching. So as I started to go in front of bigger and bigger crowds, and I would feel nervous, I would feel afraid, I would have to ask myself, is there a real threat? to my life here? The honest answer is no. No. And then I would extend it and go, okay, if I actually did the worst speaking engagement ever in my life, and I'm totally embarrassed, can I go back to my room and still love myself? Yeah. Can my life still go on? Yeah. Will I be okay? Yeah. So exploring what the beliefs are can reveal them, then you can question them. And when you realize the beliefs are gone and you're genuinely safe, those fears will go. And of course, you'll have a backup tool with Ho'oponopono, which you can use right now on those very issues and questions.
Brilliant. Thanks for that question, Jacqueline. Great question. Okay. So yeah, speaking is a fear that a lot of people have, public speaking. If you ever come to Ireland, we'd be glad to host you, Joe, so we can talk about that when everything gets back to normal. What did you say earlier? When the coast is clear. I like that. When the coast
Right, when the coast is clear, I'll be on planes again.
We'll do an event, yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about what you're working on at the moment. You mentioned you have another book title at the moment that you're working on right now. What's current for you right now? What's going on in that book? What's the main topic?
I have two going on, which probably shouldn't surprise anybody. One is the journey of the divorce and death. I would say death, divorce, and disease, because the new partner that I developed a relationship with got a neuro-Lyme disease and was bedridden while I was going through divorce, and while I was going through grief, and while I was trying to travel when I could travel to places like Russia, and Iran was one of the last places I went before COVID hit. Mm-hmm. So this book has been therapy for me, but I also think it holds keys to people surviving things that don't look like they're survivable. Again, we all go through challenges, and if we don't know that challenges will come, they can pretty much be devastating because we think life is not going to happen that way. So one book is about my journey and my breakthrough. I don't know at this point, as I say this, as I talk about it, if it's for my therapy or if it's my blockbuster. I don't know yet. The other book is called The 3-Day Rule, and I have a program available right now based on it. And the 3-Day Rule, I'm very excited about because it basically says that what you're thinking and what you're feeling right now will tend to manifest in 3 days. Mm-hmm. Think about that. The 3-Day Rule says that what you're thinking and what you're feeling right now will manifest in 3 days. And I'm smiling because I'm thinking, I hope everybody is paying attention, because if you're not thinking something good or something positive right now and really focused on what you want to create, you might be creating something you don't really want. Mm. And the other aspect of this, and this is all going to be in the book, the 3-Day Rule, is the idea that most of us don't get what we want in 3 days. Why? Because we keep changing our mind. We may wake up right now and we say, well, I want a new relationship. I'm going to start dating. I'm going to do whatever. And then right after we go, well, I don't know where to start. Oh, I need to lose weight first. Oh, I need to go join this club. Oh, I better go. Nah, why even bother? All the good ones are taken. And we went through, you state your intention, and within seconds, you've destroyed your intention. Mm. So no wonder you don't get what you want in 3 days. By the same token, if you can state your intention and hold it and add the feeling to it and all the other things we've been talking about, you will tend to manifest it in 3 days. How about that?
Great one. You've always got books on the go. So Violetta is asking there, can you introduce this prayer to the kids as well? And I presume it works quite magically with children because they love that kind of sense of playfulness. Yes, have you had any experience working with children on it, yeah?
Yes, and lots of people have told me about working with children. The thing to remember is children don't have as many barriers to learning as we do. By the time we get to a certain age, we call ourselves adults, and we've closed down to new ideas. But children are wide open. It's like, tell them to play with the marshmallows and it's going to do something and they'll believe it. I mean, it's just, they're wide open, they're totally creative, and they have more faith than we do. So yes, I have heard of school teachers teaching the kids the Ho'oponopono prayer. I know teachers who have used it on their perceptions of the kids and seen the kids respond again in some sort of quantum physics way that I can't quite explain. We change ourselves like Dr. Hulen did at the mental institution, and somehow everybody else changes. I can't explain that.
That's so empowering when you get that, though, isn't it? It's really, you've got to just work with yourself, you know. Joe, I want to talk about what's going on the planet right now, right? Because I ask this question to a lot of people at the moment because it's great to get your kind of insights. So people have been forecasting a shift in consciousness for a long time, that the humanity's going to go through a shift in consciousness. And obviously what's happened in the last year has been very significant. It's made people have to go internal. It's made them, they've lost all their distractions. They're sitting at home. They've got time to spend. They're meditating. It's like a kind of enforced kind of meditation retreat for some people. For some, it's been very difficult. It's been right across the board. I want to ask you, do you feel this is all part of a divine plan and that we are going somewhere better through this process?
Well, I started making Instagram videos a year ago saying exactly that. Early on, especially in America, and I don't know about Ireland or other countries, they were saying there was conspiracy theories. A lot of people thought there were hoaxes going on. And so I started making videos and saying, yep, there's a conspiracy. Yep, you're correct. There is a conspiracy. It is a divine conspiracy, a divine conspiracy. And what is divinity doing? Oh, it's giving us a timeout. When we are told by the government and the powers that be and the health authorities, go inside. Well, what the divine means is go inside. Not just inside your room or your house or your apartment, go inside yourself, reconnect, meditate, contemplate, create. I thought and have said from the beginning that the divine was actually setting this up for our highest interest and our highest good. This time out has forced people to go and reflect on everything, from their life calling to their life work, to their family relationships, to certainly their health and their status of their health, to the world at large. I looked at it tremendously metaphysically, thinking that all these people who have said, one day, if I only had the time, I would learn Italian, or I would learn how to play the clarinet. It's like, you got the time. You've been given the gift. And because of the internet, I mean, thank goodness we have the internet. All of us stayed connected. All of my speaking events, the traveling ones, were canceled, but everything was put on Zoom, just like this. I'm still doing events, only I don't have to change my pants. I just change my shirt and sit here.
Don't stand up, Joe. Okay.
So I say that there is a divine conspiracy going on. It is all for our good. This is our self-reflection process. This is the time for us to, in many ways, even create new vocations, because we go inside, we realize, well, I've always wanted to be a oil painter, you know, and then you can go on YouTube, type in, how do you oil paint? And then with Amazon, you can order oil paints and everything comes right to your doorstep. And then you go in your room because you've been told to go in your room and you can create, which could be a whole new business. So there is a whole lot of self-discovery, cleansing, internal morphosis going on. And with tools like Ho'oponopono, oh, wow. We not only have been sent to our room by the divine, but with Ho'oponopono and any other prayer-like tool you know of, you can communicate with the divine. So I see all of this as a very good thing.
And, you know, there's a sense that we're making it all up as we go along. So if we're going to make something up, let's make up a story like that. But just before we go to, we're going to start winding down now, Joe. Before we do, I just want to ask you about what you said there about the divine conspiracy. Where is she or he or she or the divinity leading us, do you feel? Can you give us a sense of this kind of new world? Do you get a sense of what it looks like?
Interesting question. You know, my most honest answer is no, I can't. Because I feel that I would be putting limitations on what's possible by describing what Joe thinks is taking place or will take place. So I believe nothing is impossible. Nothing. Whatever we have said is impossible in the past has been our judgment, our opinion, our perception, and our limitation. The statements that there are things that are not possible are basically mental constructs. So if anything is possible, I don't want to be the one to put any sort of limitation out there. So I'm going to say, I don't know. Can't wait to see.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think what you said there kind of reminded me of when I get too involved from the ego perspective in my own life, I'll be okay. But when I let go and let God or let divinity, I've been blown away by what comes into your life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Me
I'm sure
too.
you have.
Me too.
So let's do that with the world right now, right? Let's just go ahead. Yeah.
Right. You know,
so,
in Ho'oponopono,
go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
In Ho'oponopono, it's said that in any moment, we're either coming from inspiration or we're coming from memory. And what that means is, in any moment, we respond with the past programming, our experiences, our beliefs, our data about how life is. That's memory. And virtually all of us are responding that way. So when you ask me a question, the default is for Joe's programming to kick in and to give some sort of answer. That's fairly predictable. But because I'm doing Ho'oponopono and I'm encouraging everybody else to do Ho'oponopono, we're deleting more and more of those memories, those limitations, which means we're available for inspiration. And I'm in love with inspiration because, as you pointed out, inspiration could surprise you. Inspiration can knock your socks off. When you come from memory, you're fairly predictable because you're going to do what you've always done in the past, maybe with a little twist or a little extension, a little bit of a nudge forward, but it'll be fairly much in your domain of what you've done. That's memory. But as you delete the memories, and I don't mean deleting the experiences and stories you've had, I mean deleting the programming that you've had, then inspiration can come in and surprise you.
You know, it's great to have this conversation, and I'm checking your books out as you're speaking. You know, what a bookcase you have, Joe. Expect miracles, be happy. It's the most uplifting bookshelf I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, cool.
So I'd like to now, Joe, ask you to do that meditation with us, if you would. You said you can bring us to the door of awakening. All these people are happy to go with you, I would say, all the way. And I don't know why I'm throwing this in, but if you feel like strumming one of those guitars during that meditation, I'd love to hear it. So I'll hand over to you for we've got 8 minutes to go on a meditation. And just when we finish up, folks, I'm gonna hang on with Joe at the end. So I'll invite you all to leave when you're ready at the end of the call. And I'm gonna, Joe, ask you just to hang on for a couple of minutes at the end. Yeah, we'll have a brief chat. But if you fancy strumming that guitar during the meditation, I'm all in. Go for it.
If it was in tune, I'd probably do that. I don't want to create a disruptive moment. I want to be in the flow. So first of all, I want to thank everybody who's come here. It is a great honor to be here. I am flattered that you have all come here, and I hope that I've said something useful to you. So I do long to meet you all in person in Ireland, which I've heard so much wonderful stories, and I have friends there. I have clients there. I have people who work with me and for me there. So I can't wait to go. So to begin with, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. The little meditation is a narration, and you can keep your eyes open or you can keep them closed, whatever you feel like. It's totally fine. And what I usually do is to ask you to notice that even right now, you're thinking, you have thoughts. It's part of the human experience. Thoughts just get created organically, nothing right, nothing wrong. You just have thoughts. But notice you have thoughts. Maybe even notice the type of thoughts. Thoughts about me, thoughts about your host, thoughts about some things I've said, thoughts about what you're doing next, thoughts. And then notice if you're having thoughts, maybe you're not those thoughts. Maybe you're somehow separate from those thoughts. Thoughts are coming and going, but somehow you're able to witness them. You can report on them. Occasionally, you might grab a thought and hold on to it, but most of the time, you just notice it flies by. You are somehow watching your thoughts. And then the next thing to notice is your body. How's your body feel right now? You might have been sitting for an hour and a half, so you need to move a little bit. You have a little ache or a pain. Are you proud of your body? You want to change your body? How do you feel inside your body? And then notice if you can report on your body like this, then maybe you're not your body. Maybe just consider that you're inside your body, much like an astronaut is inside an astronaut suit. You're inside your suit. You can look out through your eyes and you can report on how you feel and how you look, but you're a witness to your body. So notice you're not your body. And then notice how you feel, your emotions. How are you feeling emotionally right now? Are you at peace, confused, happy, grieving, sad, angry? Whatever's going on is okay. We're not judging it. We're allowing it. So you have some sort of feelings, either there or coming and going. But notice those feelings are a little bit like your thoughts and a little bit like your body. You can describe them. You can witness them. You can be detached from them. So now let's look at this even more deeply. You're not your thoughts. You're not your body. You're not your emotions. You are somehow this observer watching and witnessing all of it. What is that observer? What is that I that is within you, deeper than you, that looks out to your world? That I within you is the same I within me, and the same I within each person on this call. That I is the divine. That I is the universal connective consciousness. The more you can spend with that internal I, the more you will be knocking at the door of an awakening. So I would remind you and leave you with the challenge to, as often as you can, note that you're not your thoughts, that you're witnessing them. Note that you're not your body, that you're in it. Note that you're not your emotions, that you are observing them. And then see if you can really merge with the part of you observing all of it, the witness. That spiritual witness is home.
Thank you, Joe. That was beautiful. Thank you. So thanks, folks. We'll be back again soon with another guest. I just want to send my appreciation to Joe. If you want to send your appreciation as you head off there, thanks for joining us on this call. I'm going to hang on with Joe just for a couple of minutes. So whenever you're ready to go, give him a little wave, a little heart, a little buzz from Ireland before you leave.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you again next time.